Asia CEO is really a sought-after brand and recognition among the private sector. I work abroad as an OFW, and I've seen the experience of how Filipino were treated that time. So I always thought of creating an event someday to really recognize Filipinos and also market Philippines.
Let's present Philippines in a positive light. And the goal is expand your business, start your business, move your business to Philippines, hire Filipinos. They're good people to work with, and you'll do well. That's the goal.
Way back when we were the poor or sick country of Asia, and now if you take a look at, for example, the BPO industry, we're number one in the world. There's a lot of potential for the country, and if we are really going to see fruition that we are going to be one of the top economies by 2050, I think it is very important for us to really pull our resources together.
And we always believed from the beginning that this association was the right medium, the right structure, and the right outfit to really put the Philippine business community on top of the agenda for the Filipino people and also for the international community.
Well, it gives me a fantastic insight in terms of how broad the industries are and how many different types of successes that are contributing to the growth and inclusive growth of this nation.
We have to create a future where our next generation of talent and leaders is prepared for all of the new opportunities that will present themselves.
Asia CEO Forum is very unique because it is more than any other forum emphasizing that this is about nation building.
Economic growth is a very wide subject, and Asia CEO Forum always find the right angle with the right topic at the right time to talk about, and that's why there is such attraction to these events.
They connect people, but they also create a platform for transfer of best practices, best knowledge.
I believe in the vision of Richard and Rebecca. I think they have this vision to help make the Philippines a first world country in 2030.
And with our partnership together, I know that we're achieving a lot of things.
Thank you for what you're doing. We applaud your efforts. We're proud and happy to be your partners.
We encourage other companies to join in and be a sponsor, and I'm very, very sure that they'll find it worthwhile.
Bio oil made my pregnancy go by with one less thing to worry about. I didn't get a single stretch mark. The skin on my swollen belly was smooth and beautiful the whole way through.
The world of today may have changed, yet our belief has always stayed the same. Everyone deserves the good. That's why we've changed for the better. We've made ourselves better, so we can reach those who have just begun to chase after their dreams. So we can give women the light by which to guide their families to a better tomorrow. So we can realize the hope that every Filipino harbors and move forward, leaving no one behind. We're better today, because today is what shapes the future. And in the future, we see everyone leading a lifetime for good. In life, a lifetime for good.
Strong at independent, lahat ay kinakaya para sa anak, negosyo para sa buong pamilya. Kayod hanggang umaga, todo ipon ng pera, pero ang kinikita, sapat nga ba? But money ain't a problem, there's a way that you can handle it. Tamang edukasyon, pangarap mo'y makakamit. Pagpaplano ang solusyon, paghandaan mo na, magsimula na ngayon. Empower na Pinay sa lahat ng bagay, halika na't matutong sumabay. In control, independent, you can make your money grow. You're a shiro, be a shiro. Empower ng Pinay sa lahat ng bagay, halika na't matutong sumabay. In control, independent, you can make your money grow. You're a shiro, be a shiro. Inako, Pilipina, inka ba, inka ba? Inako, Pilipina, inka ba? Tara na, Pilipina, tara na, tara na, tara na, Pilipina, tara na. Be financially smart for your family and future. Inako, Pilipina, inka ba, you're a shiro, be a shiro. It's never too early, no it's never too late. Gotta save and invest now, no more reason to wait. Simulan mo na, paghandaan ng future. Ano man ang mangyari, ikaw ay secure. Mga bigla ang kailangan para sa kalusugan. Mga pagsubok ng buhay ay kaya mong lampasan. Ikaw ay confident sa iyong kinabukasan. Ikaw ay prepared in life. Oh, empower ng Pinay sa lahat ng bagay, halika na't matutong sumabay. In control, independent, you can make your money grow. You're a shiro, be a shiro. Empower ng Pinay sa lahat ng bagay, halika na't matutong sumabay. In control, independent, you can make your money grow. You're a shiro, be a shiro. Inako, Pilipina, inka ba, inka ba? Inako, Pilipina, inka ba? Tara na, Pilipina, tara na, tara na, tara na, Pilipina, tara na. Be financially smart for your family and future. Inako, Pilipina, inka ba, you're a shiro, be a shiro. In ako, in life, in tayo, you're a shiro. In ako, in life, in tayo, be a shiro. In ako, in life, in tayo, you're a shiro. In ako, in life, in tayo, be a shiro.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord Jesus, channel of all goodness, the way to all graces and blessings, we thank you for accompanying us always and for leading us through this new and challenging road in this time of pandemic. Lord, the recent times have really tested us, yet with your loving providence and never-failing care, we leveled up and moved forward. As one team, we implore you, Lord, to continue strengthening us, inspiring us, and uniting us towards achieving our goals. Impart to us your wisdom in all our plans and decisions. Remove all barriers which prevent us from reaching our goals. Allow the spirit of cooperation and concern to bind us in our undertakings. May we always bring love and joy in all the services we provide, recognizing your immeasurable goodness and with a heart full of thanksgiving. We send this prayer through you to our loving Father. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Welcome to Asia Women's Forum 2022. This episode is for professional women and all those who champion them. Be inspired and enriched, supported, and mentored. Hear many of the nation's most remarkable women describe their stories, successes, struggles, and secrets at this transformational episode. Strap yourself in for Asia Women's Forum 2022. Okay, let's get going with our first guest, Nina Aguas, the executive chairman of Insular Life. She has just a tremendous background spanning 30 years of retail and private banking across Asia and the US. So glad to have Nina Aguas, executive chairman of Insular Life.
My grandmother was the wife of a farmer who worked the land, toiled the soil, under the burning sun or the heavy rains during the typhoon season. Our grandmother would wake up at 4 a.m. most days to prepare a humble breakfast before our Ingkong and his friends set out on their carabaos to either plant, irrigate, or harvest the palay rice eventually. Well, our Apo would stay home, and though she herself most likely was without formal schooling, she was determined to bring up her children beyond the harshness of the rice fields. With their meager farm earnings, augmented by raising chickens, ducks, pigs, and goats, she saved to send all 5 children to school and earn a college degree. And our Apo more than fed the world. 4 generations are living dreams way beyond our determined and loving Apong Dora ever imagined. We are a living testimony of what took root in the dreams and aspirations and the hard work of the wife of a farmer.
Thank you, Nina, and always good to see you looking good and sounding good too. Ruth Cabal, the prominent news anchor journalist of CNN Philippines that everybody knows. She has an interesting background. She started off as a radio journalist and moved her way up over a period of time, a couple of decades at least, that she has been in the business, and now certainly one of the nation's most prominent news anchors. So please welcome an interesting story, Ruth Cabal of CNN Philippines.
Thank you, Richard, for that. It's really an honor to be part of this year's Asia CEO Women's Forum. And like many people at this time, I'm actually, sorry about my throat, but I'm actually quarantined at home because I was exposed to a family member who was positive with COVID-19. But of course, we will not let this pandemic get in the way of the things we have to do right. So As I would always tell my colleagues, this is what we trained for. This is exactly what we live for. As reporters, we know and we face the dangers and the risks. We go to a province even before a typhoon makes its landfall. I also remember one time there was a magnitude 7.2 earthquake in Bohol, and our network had to hire a private plane to make sure we were the first team on the scene. And of course, we walk into war zones in Mindanao with what 6-pound bulletproof vests and Kevlar helmets and all. So most of my life, that's actually how it's been for me as a journalist and as a woman, taking risks, facing up to challenges, diving into the unknown, but making sure that I'm equipped enough to do my job. I was in high school, I remember seeing Jessica Soho. So she was covering a gunfight in Tuguegarao between government forces and rebel soldiers. I was watching her. She was sort of like ducking and flinching with every gunshot, but she never stopped reporting. She was just talking about what was happening live. And I told myself that's what I wanted to be. So from the start, I was sure with what I wanted to be. It's just that it wasn't an easy path. So while I was in college, I was a working student. I first worked in a radio station. I wrote and then I reported the hourly newscast. So back then we were just using newspapers or wires, and I would just write whatever I would read from the papers. As a free-spirited college student would, there were a lot of other things that I wanted to do. I joined a rock band. I traveled. I almost got married. So it took me 8 years before I finished college. After that, I applied to all three major TV networks. There was ABC5, ABS-CBN, and GMA. So it was ABC5 who first called me up. I worked as a junior reporter for 1 year before I got hired in GMA. And of course, in GMA, lo and behold, that's where my idol, Jessica Soho, was, and she became my boss and my mentor. I worked there for almost 15 years. It's just fine. I found myself like enjoying to write a lot of political stories and also doing investigative and special report. I remember a time when most of the newsrooms, all of the newsrooms in the major networks were actually led by women executives. For me, when I do my job, I just don't read the report. I just don't give the facts or present the facts. I explain, I give context to events or issues. Richard, I was just telling you that, because of this Omicron variant, we had to limit our operations. So right now, I would do my show right here from home, but I can also interview people from my home. I can do an investigative report and research everything online just using my laptop. So there's really nothing that can stop me from performing my duty as a journalist, from doing more and from being more.
Ruth, can I ask you a question? Now, yes, it's impressive what can be done online, especially in news, but I kind of miss sometimes that personal touch where I see you, beside someone and you're getting the inside, thing. And do you think
around the field covering events?
Yeah. Yeah. So do you think it'll go back to the way it was, or you think it's going to be more a hybrid in the future? What do you see it?
I think everyone's looking at it as being the new normal, that this is how the future is going to be. Of course, we would always prefer to interview someone in person, face to face, but now we're actually accepting that it works the same way. Like what we're doing now, we're doing the interviews via Zoom or online. It doesn't get in the way of getting the information, of you asking questions or you trying to get the facts.
Now for a special guest from Singapore, our favorite Singapore Filipina. She's known as a celebrity show host who has really made a mark for herself in Singapore. She was the show host for the Miss World Singapore, the Miss Earth Singapore. The Singapore Tourism Board chose her to represent and promote Singapore tourism across Asia, India, China, Korea, on and on they sent her. Singapore has really warmed to this person. So please welcome Pamela Pillapil. So glad to have her. Glad to have you, Pam.
Richard, what would you do without me? I am a woman, as you can see, a real woman, woman, meaning when I say real, what I mean is I embody the feminism of a woman. I am the type of person that believes that there is a creation called man, and that man and women man and women must work together so that they can create a perfect universe. What a simplistic ideology. But I believe that behind every successful man is a successful woman, and a successful woman is a successful man. And that's how I work with my life anywhere I go. I never thought about gender, until I grew older. Like, I didn't know there was a difference where women cannot do this and men can do that. I only know the difference that women needed to dress more than men. So that was the only thing I had in mind. I didn't see why I couldn't climb trees. I couldn't climb coconut trees. I was born in the Philippines in Cebu, and I was always enjoying my Sundays, dressed well, according to my mom, because we were meeting the divine being. And we were like always enjoying ourselves. And I didn't think of my brother as any less different. He was a man. He was my only brother, of course. And I didn't think of anything. Like, I thought that both will do the same thing. And I was very mischievous as a person. I did a lot of things that men are doing. Now, being a woman is not just all serious and no play and no thinking. As I say, women are pretty. They can be decorative. That's not true. It's changing. Today, the women workforce are more in demand. More are becoming powerful leaders. More have credit cards. More have debit cards. More have houses and cars. And they're really dominating the world. Women have certain things that contributed to the development of this women being more, I would call it intuitive. We have emotions. We are easily approachable. I believe no matter where you are, you can be yourself. You can contribute a lot. And this is what I want to share with you. Learn everything, everything. There's no such thing as a line that breaks a woman to learn only these things, and a man to learn these things. Learn everything. And it's a challenge. Right now, I'm learning a lot of things like hammering the door, or learning how to use, those handicrafts things, or maybe I really am not good at it, but I am learning now, because I've lost my husband since July 15, this last 2021. And then I realized there are so many things I'm dependent on him. So my advice to all, and I think the team do know that I am an entertainer, a celebrity show host, but behind the scene, I'm a serious session lecturer. I lecture in the university, an academic lecturer, as a matter of fact, to subjects like marketing and integrated marketing, Asia Pacific marketing, events management, and also mass communication and media. What's interesting is my students are male and female. And then I noticed that they have this attitude like, oh, you're a male, you do that. You're a female. So I'm trying to break those barriers through my teaching them.
How would other women possibly develop their talking skills, people skills, to make themselves more confident like you? What advice would you give, Pamela?
I think they should learn to work around in the right circles. Okay, if you are the kind of person that doesn't like to talk, or you don't like people, you should be making more friends, although I don't encourage it too much in this current pandemic. But what I'm saying is you can be friends online, of course, with caution. I think you cannot be living in that kind of shell where you are living in your own world. You need to explore. Well, for me as a person, I like to explore and discover and do new things every day. No doubt I have sadness, but I also know how to be happy. And no doubt I am a bit tired sometimes, but I also know when to sleep. So that's why it's important that we circulate, make more friends, not the same type of friends. And I think that's important. If you are very outgoing, your friends need not be all outgoing. There are friends who are different from you, so that you can discuss with them and learn. Like, why do you think that way? It's quite interesting when you talk to people, you realize they think so differently from you. And they always think I'm confident. This is something I'm interested in knowing. Maybe I'll do a thesis on it. why people think I'm confident. Interesting, right?
Our next guest is Anaina Batra. She's CEO of Asian Venture Philanthropy Network. And you probably have not heard of this organization, but this is a very high-powered operation that worked with some of the world's largest and most activist organizations for philanthropic opportunities. Accenture, Amazon, American Express, on and on. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. This was actually before the divorce. I don't know how it works now, but anyway, that's not. But in any case, she's really having a huge impact professionalizing and revolutionizing philanthropic giving across the Asia region. So we're really pleased to have her.
Thank you, Richard, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are as you hear this. I grew up in a privileged household in India. I was an only child, and I went to an all-girls school and then got a scholarship to an all-women's college in the United States. And all through my childhood and adolescence, there was no one who ever told me that there was anything I could not do because I was a woman. I started my career with a prominent multinational bank, and I accepted this job out of several offers I received, primarily because this job offered me the opportunity to move back to India from the United States. It was a large multinational company, and in countries like ours, those jobs were considered to be really the best that you could get. However, in my first year, I faced sexual harassment from my boss, who was then a senior member of the HR department. And when I chose to highlight this, it was initially not taken very seriously. However, after I persisted, it turned out that mine was not a sole incident, and no one had dared to speak up because of the fear of not being believed or having to bear consequences that sometimes could be too much. Too often, we as women are told to take back our complaints or concerns because it will adversely affect men who are viewed as the principal breadwinners. And it makes speaking up even harder for women and other marginalized gender groups who are then made to feel that they are bringing a good person down. The average number of years to achieve gender parity across the board is 135 years. That's about 4 generations. And as an Asian leader and an Asian woman CEO, I think that's far too long. The Asia Gender Network, which, as you talked about, Richard, is supported by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We are committed to moving more than $100 million to close the SDG gap. I think this is really important. And the reason I have mentioned all of these stories and situations, it's because we see there is a funding gap that is related to gender, that is related to women founders. And as a network of social impact investors, in our conversations with our members, we've identified that it's important to look at a gender lens across the causes that our members fund. Whether it's education, whether it's healthcare, whether it's livelihoods, or whether it's investing in businesses. Effective leadership is no longer a hierarchical, individualistic, hyper-masculine kind of concept. I think across the world, well-recognized leaders are emerging as champions of inclusiveness, of collaboration, and of womanhood, because advocating for women means that you will advocate for everyone.
Naina, I find there's a lot of organizations that would like to do more, either contributing, you mentioned millions of dollars and so forth that you're helping to place, and also within their organizations. What is something that, a bit of a success story you've heard organizations get involved with?
So I think it's not really about being an activist. It's really about looking around yourself and seeing, how do I actually make sure that women, girls and boys, women and men are sort of offered equal opportunities. It starts by, simple things, right? We have we have a program, we have a member called Educate Girls. And, it looks at supporting or keeping more than 1 million girls in school. Now, when you think about it, it's not just about keeping girls in school. It's actually having access to clean toilets. It's having access to running water. Most girls, when they reach adolescence, tend to drop out of school. If you keep a girl in school, you not only educate that girl, you make sure that the next 2 generations of her family will also look at education. So look around you and see what you support, right? Most of us, if not all of us, have a very positive attitude towards women, whether they be, in our family, whether they be people we have relationships with. It's when women come into the workforce, it's kind of at some point that equation just gets lopsided. So I will actually tell you, forget, not just about philanthropic dollars. What can all of us do in the workplace to make sure that the women we work with, our colleagues that we work with, feel that they are an equal part of the workforce and are supported just as much as our male colleagues?
Our next guest, we are very pleased to get to know more Doreen Benavidez. She is a professor with the Asian Seminary of Christian Ministries, and also quite a fascinating story. When she was young, she started what they call tribal ministry, working with tribal people in far-off places in the country, in Philippines. Please welcome Doreen Benavidez.
Thank you, Richard, for the opportunity to share to you about the story and the journey of my ministry. My work with the Mangyan started in 1999 when I was still a seminary student. My missions class required that we study a particular people group so that we can give recommendations for evangelistic efforts and evangelistic activities. I arranged a team to visit the place with me so that we can study together. I organized and planned a trip going to Mindoro, and God led me to the Mangyan tribes in that place. The undertaking was a trailblazing for me in 2 ways. One, I gained the ministry, and number 2, a member of the team eventually became my husband. The team supposedly go up the mountain the day we arrived. But because the team was tired, they requested that we rest when we arrive and we go up the mountain the next day. I agreed delaying the hike up to the mountain. And so we rested on that day. And the next day we started hiking, started going up the mountain. Upon reaching the first Mangyan village the next day, we did our courtesy meeting with the chieftain and with the elders of the community, because you will not be permitted to enter unless the elders would say, yes, you can come and you can, do your research. And so that's what we did. While the team member who is was preaching the gospel, the wife of the chieftain started wailing. And so I noticed her and I said, what's going on? But because I couldn't understand the Alangan language, the Mangyang language, so I asked somebody to translate it to me what she's saying. And so the Mangyan translator came up to her and asked, anong nangyayari? What's going on? And the wife of the chieftain told him, bakit ngayon lang? Or why only now? And so when the translator came back to me, I thought she was angry because it's already lunchtime. I need to know the reason why she's shouting. And so again, I asked the translator, can you go back to her and ask what really happened? And while they were talking, the translator froze and I saw his face shocked. And so when he came back to me, he couldn't speak. And so I had to force him, tell me what happened. Anong nangyari? Tell me what happened. And so he narrated that the day that we arrived at 3 p.m., the village sacrificed a baby. I was shocked. And I said,
Really?
Oh my God, yes. So can you imagine how God captured my heart and said, in the relates, you were supposed to be there. Now I'm crying. And so, I knew in my heart that something has to be done. So I rallied people, beginning with my family, with my friends, and shared to them the vision. to do something for the Mangyan tribes. And by God's grace, many joined me in the adventure of love for the Mangyan tribes. I did not plan to start a missions organization, but God directed my path to address the needs that I saw, just like what He told me. When you saw a need, you are the solution. I saw extreme poverty in the place. The Mangyan tribes live in poor health conditions. The children are malnourished. And now that we have the tools to assess their condition, many of them are severely wasted. And most of all, of course, they are in spiritual bondage. Today, we now have 40 Christian communities. When I say Christian communities, meaning to say the killing of babies stopped, because we know we introduced them to the powerful transformation of the gospel. For 23 years, I ended up leading an all-male missions organization because the tribal leaders that I work with are all male. It's a patriarchal culture. Women are able to make bold and wise decisions as leaders. And that helps because of the, motherly instinct and this non-authoritative persona that you have if you're a woman, and you can foster cooperation to the people around you.
Sometimes some would say that might be a dangerous thing to do.
One of the blessings that I had with working with the Mangyan tribes is they are a peace-loving people in a sense, because they have a respect to the outsiders, to strangers. They are very hospitable. And because before we launch every project and anything that we have done for all these years, we did research first. You do your work of research first, so that you can weigh and you can calculate, is this feasible? Is this okay? Is this dangerous? Because as a leader, you also are responsible for your team. So you do not just have the passion and just go, go, go. You do your research so that you know that it's safe.
We move now to Gemma Garland. She is the Vice President of TOA Global, and Gemma has really made a big name for herself in building Philippines into a financial powerhouse in the world. She previously ran the Ernst & Young fabulously successful shared services operations in Philippines. AIG before that did fantastic work there, and now with TOA. So really is making a difference in the nation. So please welcome Gemma Garland of TOA Global. Glad to have you, Gemma.
It's really an absolute honor to be here alongside extremely successful women in the business. And I wanted to start off by sharing a quote from Jane Goodall. She said, "What you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make." So when I came across this quote in a magazine cover, it resonated so much and made me ask myself, what kind of life would I choose to live? And I am a very driven person, maybe too driven sometimes. I usually work long hours most of the time, especially during my younger years, but I always wanted to make every minute count. And a few years ago, as I was reconnecting with a former colleague, she asked me, "Gemma, do you really know how people in the industry regard you and how people you led in the past are calling you right now?" And Richard, I know that I have been called many names, like, Gemma is our mother, a mentor, a coach, a boss, a friend. But this person is also a great friend of mine said, "Gemma, people in the industry regard you as the builder, a builder of great teams, a builder of great relationships, a builder of great culture." And I was a little bit shocked, and that was really very touching and was such an honor to hear remarks from a person I have worked with in the past. So as time progresses, I have made it my personal mission to build and support people's career, build strong, stable leadership teams that help create strong foundations in any organization that I became part of. And that is exactly the legacy that I wanted to leave behind in this world. Because when you teach, you encourage and mentor someone to be the best, that one person can recreate the same experience with another person. And as we all continue to do the same in bringing together great teams over time, we all help shape the next generation of empowered, high-performing individuals who will become the next set of leaders driving great things wherever their journey will take them. So how am I seeing myself and anyone else making a difference? And I wanted to share some of my guiding principles in life. So I always make a point that, you need to have a purpose. I think life without a purpose is meaningless. Second is you have to have self-awareness. You know what you are good at, and you are humble enough to ask help for things that you are not good at. That's teamwork in action. We will never be an expert of everything, and we will always need each other's help to accomplish things. And number three, remember that your efforts need not always be the innermost task or the biggest contributions in anything that you do. We should really never underestimate the value of everyone's contribution, no matter how small you think it could be. And fourth is we need to empower people. The ultimate use of power is really to empower others. That's why when building any kind of team, it's also important that there's steady and reliable source of support. You should never start something that you do not intend to finish, especially if people will rely on you as the source of support and empowerment. You need to make things happen for other people, not just for yourself. And as leaders, I think the next guiding principle is you need to lead the way. And the best way to influence is really to lead by example. You need to walk the talk. And lastly, I'm a believer of celebrating success, whether it's big or small. It's not enough that you or your team are doing a good job. You have to tell everyone about it.
Now, Gemma, thinking about helping people, you've helped a lot of the nation's accountants get jobs over the years and finance people and so forth. But with the COVID and things, how's your business going these days? Is it still growing, or is it pulling back a bit? What do you see?
It's growing day by day, Richard. It's surprising that with the pandemic, there's more opportunities that came out. A lot more of our clients are needing the services in the Philippines. I also thought that there's been scarcity of the same skill set nowadays globally. But the good thing is we really have some amazing accountants and bookkeepers in the Philippines, and they're sought after. And the good thing with is we're really very, very much focused, and we are investing a lot in the training and certification of our accountants. And that's what the differentiator that we're offering to our employees right now.
And our next guest, Tonichi Achura Parek. Her official title is Country Manager and APAC Regional Vice President of NEARSO. And she is a foremost representative of the BPO, business process outsourcing shared services sector in Philippines that has been such an important industry for the nation. And as a developer of talent and careers, Tonichi is a poster girl for that. She started as an agent, she worked hard, she did the right things, and she moved up in her career where today she is clearly among the top leaders of this industry, employing, $1.5 million, $1.2 million, $1.3 million, something like that, people in just the Philippines, growing quickly. She's worked with premier companies and now manages the APAC region for a very credible, prominent organization now. So also on the board of the Contact Center Association of the Philippines, premier CCAP, which is the premier association for the industry. So yeah, with an interesting story and just a fantastic person, please welcome Tonichi Achura Parek, Country Manager of NEARSO. Glad to have you, Tonichi.
Glad to be here, Richard. Thank you so much for having me. It's truly an honor. A few years back, I was reading about Kamala Harris, and I read this quote where she said, dream with ambition, and lead with conviction. And that struck me. As a woman, I looked at that and I got chills when I read that. I was actually enjoying my 12-month sabbatical from my corporate life when I found myself internally debating whether or not I should pursue my Contact Center Association of the Philippines board membership. And CCAP, obviously, as you mentioned, is the industry association of the contact centers in the Philippines. I'm on my third term. During my second term in 2017 to 2019, I found myself being the only woman sitting on the board responsible for more than 1 million workers. Approximately half were women, right? So at first, there was a sense of pride. And then I realized the tremendous responsibility of making sure that the opportunity to serve and be heard is made available to more women, those of whom I represent. So I was not really, like women empowerment. I wasn't really always an active advocate of supporting women. I just cheered them on and provided support whenever needed. But I was not the type to take that responsibility upon myself to increase that voice. So that representation. The pride, I realized, should not just be about me. It shouldn't be about me breaking the glass ceiling, but breaking that glass ceiling big enough for more women. 2020 became a turning point for me. I experienced firsthand being singled out as a woman by a company that claimed to promote women. So I decided to be active in advocating more women in positions of influence. I reached out to more women within the industry to encourage them to run for a seat, and then actively campaign for more diverse groups of nominees. So today, thankfully, 3 out of 9 board members are women. Over the years, I focused on creating and promoting an apolitical environment, not just limited to matters about gender equality, but on everything that contributes to an inclusive corporate culture. And so, in summary, these are the principles that really acted as my true north. First is to be fair. If we live in a world where everything is fair, we wouldn't be faced with gender bias. If our actions are properly guided by making decisions based on facts and not opinions, we will be acting on identified needs and not on biases. Second is to be intentional. Act on what is truly meaningful to you. It is important to stop regularly and meditate. I do that a lot. Constantly ask yourself what truly matters and identify and be guided by your purpose. And lastly, be trustworthy.
I know you're so connected with so many people and you know what's going on in the industry, but this is your business process outsourcing shared services sector has been such an amazing developer of careers for Filipinos and world-class incomes for Filipinos. Many people here earn what people in most countries only dream. But now, how far more do you think this industry can go in Philippines?
Absolutely a long way, Richard. Actually, people ask me sometimes, why I engage myself in CCAP. It's free work, and sometimes it's a thankless job, right? But, over the years, I've been in this industry since 2003, and it has brought me opportunities I did not even dream about, sent me to countries, cultures, different experiences that I did not even think possible. I lived in the States and for a year, and I didn't even think that was, even remotely possible when I was, identifying my career path. But it was this industry that made all of that possible, coupled with dreams, coupled with hard work and, really good mentors. But I want to make sure, I engage in CCAP and BPO industry activities because it is my way of paying it forward. I advocate for a bigger and brighter and stronger BPO industry because I want to make sure that the generations following me, who will follow after me, these opportunities will still be made available to them.
And we keep moving to our next guest is Jenica Dizon, the country director for Waves for Water. And Jenica's become what people say is a national advocate for clean water access, certainly really focuses a lot of time and effort on this. And it is, something, a critically important thing. So this organization is a large global operation with organizations in 40 countries. And so she's doing a lot to improve people's access to clean water and women and all of that stuff. So please welcome Jenica Dizon of Waves for Water.
Thanks so much, Richard. Thank you for having me today. So as Richard said, we're Waves for Water. We're an international humanitarian aid organization that is committed to providing access to clean water to all those who need it. When you talk about water, it's not just, lessening or quickening your shower or turning off the tap when you brush your teeth, but also considering what your water footprint is. How much water is consumed by the industries that you support? If you like to buy lots of clothes, denim, the diet that you choose, all of these have huge water consumption levels. And so we need to think about water as a holistic component of our lives and really of our survival. So it's very essential. And this is really why the org does what it does. It's not just providing people with something to drink, but knowing that this will help uplift communities and really help them improve their overall health and well-being. We also work with the military as their community relations partner, and it's through their help that we've been able to reach really the remotest islands of the country, from the Babuyan group of islands in the Batanes area to also Tawi-Tawi in Mindanao. And right now we're in the thick of our Super Typhoon Odette response, and we've been able to deploy already 2,102 filters as of yesterday. And as you can see here, this photo on the left is in Cebu, because there's no electricity even in major, cities in the Visayas and Mindanao. There are no refilling stations, so people have really had to resort to using any kind of water that's available. And what the filters have become is, a water station. People come and leave their containers there, and the water systems just work overnight, refilling them. So it's been a huge help, not just providing people with something to drink, but ensuring that they have their health altogether, especially as they continue and recover and rebuild from the typhoon.
Very interesting, Jenica. And how do you find people that need water resources like what you have? You mentioned the armed forces, but how do you do that? I mean, do you yourself go out looking for these places, or do you work through other organizations? What do you do?
It's a mix. Sometimes we work with a local government unit. They come to us. Sometimes it's been referred to us by, grassroots organizations, those really based in the area. Other times it's really us who see beforehand. So because of the disaster response that we do, we also see the need in communities that, their need prior to a disaster happening. So we crowdsource in different ways, and then we have a site selection criteria. We assess if there's high incidence of waterborne diseases, if they're highly vulnerable to disasters, if their water source, so there are different kinds of water supply levels. If they're at point they use they're dependent on open sources of water, or they just use hand pumps. So anything that's untreated, it's a community that has the potential for us to be able to serve them.
This episode is presented by BioOil and In Life, with major sponsors Chalkboard, Ibex, and Cayenne Philippines. Let's go now to our next guest is Colleen Ritchie, coming to us from the US, probably New York, I think. She is Senior Vice President with T-Tech, or formerly known as Teletech in Philippines. The company employs a vast number of Filipinos and seems to think very highly of them, but also she has global operations reporting to her with upwards of 60,000 people in the company. So with a special message and a special focus on women and LGBT and diversity and all of these good things, please welcome Colleen Ritchie of T-Tech. Glad to have you, Colleen.
Well, thank you, Richard, for having me. As you stated, my name is Colleen Ritchie, and I have been with T-Tech, or Teletech as we are called in the Philippines, for over 23 years. And my journey with women in leadership and diversity as an organization has been a long journey. So as you can imagine, early in my career, I was really surrounded by men. All of my peers were men, my bosses were men. And about 8 or 10 years ago, I asked my boss at the time, our CEO, if I could start a women's organization so that I could help new women leaders with some of the pain points that I faced over my career. And it was, kind of an immediate yes. TTAC, Teletech is very good at recognizing when they need to do the right thing. As my shirt says, it's one of our core values as a company. And so the Women in Leadership organization has grown globally. We have communities in all of our locations, whether that be each Philippine site in the US, Mexico, Latin America, wherever. And, we try to tackle women faced, things that women are facing on a day-to-day basis as they try to move up the ladder. So we're monitoring that, we're tracking that, and we believe very strongly as an organization that a diverse team is a better team. When you have diverse people on your team, whether that be women, LGBTQ+, you are going to come up with better solutions because you have different perspectives. And so it's very important to us that we've set metrics around making sure that we get more women leaders, more LGBTQ+ leaders, more BIPOC leaders as we go up the ladder. And to do that, we've put in a lot of programs to help sponsor these diverse groups in terms of career development. We have put, measurements in place. We've changed our practices around interviewing. We really try to focus on women-based issues, as an example, daycare, or like in the Philippines, working nights and being a mom. We know there's a lot of different things that are challenging for women or diverse candidates in the workplace. And we are really trying to get in front of those things, address those things, talk about them with full transparency, and try to make changes to help everybody and eventually become a leader in this space, which I think we are today. But I think as any company, you always want to do more.
Everyone's talking about the work of the future thing. Do you think it's going to be a positive thing for women, let's say, or you think it's going to put them more on the back burner? Work from home, work from different hours. What do you see for the future, Colleen?
When you say work of the future, I don't know that anybody has kind of figured out exactly what the future is going to hold. And I think as a company, we're really trying to focus on how can we be flexible and nimble and have a lot of different options. So, that means we're going to have hybrid models. We're going to have a work from home model where people can stay and work from home. We're going to have a come to the site model if that works better for people and for our clients. And then we're going to have something in the middle where people can come in and work and sometimes be at home. I think in the Philippines, there's, other challenges with stability of internet and things of that nature. But I do think when you think about women, especially, the ability to work out of your home and not have that commute time and not have maybe the extra cost of, especially in the Philippines, if their children are sleeping and they're working during the night, they don't have to have a babysitter. They don't have to hire daycare because they're still in the location. So I think there's a lot of value in the women workforce in having a work from home solution in the country. And we're really excited about it. As soon as, the pandemic hit, we were able to get and deploy all of our folks in working within, a week or so in their homes. And, while we're still kind of going through some growing pains with it, it has worked out really nicely for all of our employees, but I especially think our women employees are benefiting from it for sure.
Our next guest is Julie Castillo, coming to us from Nashville, Tennessee. She is a global leader in the BPO shared services sector as Chief Strategic Accounts Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of Ibex. This is one of the world's premier BPO employers and certainly a major force in the Philippines. She has worked across this industry and across the world, previously with Citel, another outstanding company with a big footprint in the Philippines. Please welcome Julie Castille of Ibex Global.
Thank you, Richard. I am very happy to be here. So thank you for having me today. I started in sales years ago in a very male-dominated industry, which was telecom. So I started in sales for Sprint, selling long distance to a tiny little territory about the size of a postage stamp. And so I had to go and call on 30 companies a day and drag back long distance bills and evaluate them and then take them back into, telling the decision maker how much money they could save if they went with Sprint. So I will tell you that in my territory, not everyone was waiting for me the minute I walked in the door. Couldn't believe that. So it took some work to get to the right decision makers and find out a way that I was going to figure out a way that I was going to, number one, elevate the way I wanted to in the company as fast as I wanted to, two, make the financial means I wanted to, and three, be super fulfilled, with what I was doing. I put in the work and I thought, you know what, this is going to take a really long time. And I saw this job. I saw this person with this national sales manager. And I said, I want to go do that. So I went and interviewed that person and, they kind of shooed me away and say, oh, this takes forever. There's a long path to get there. And I thought, well, I'm going to do it faster and set out on that path. And one day I literally got a tap on the shoulder in my cube. And somebody said, come with me. And it was the only other woman in our office. And we went into the conference room. We set up a war room. And she said, I want you to take this marker and I want you to write on that whiteboard, what is your calling? What is your gift? I said, I don't know, right? I have no idea. But she set about helping me find out what that was and where I was going to really leverage my talents. And so we worked in that war room. She was hard on me. She pushed me. She got me out of my comfort zone to learn the business differently. And in the end, I got that national account job faster than anyone at Sprint had ever done it. But I did that by my number one piece of advice is because I was coachable, right? She pushed me in ways I didn't want to be pushed. But she said to me, Julie, if you ever want to elevate in your career and over the long haul, be coachable, right? Absorb, learn, listen. And that's how you're going to show somebody that you're ready for the next role and the next role and the next role. So then I went and I said, look, I want to go work in a big technology company. So along came EDS, now HP. And I walked into yet another very male dominated world. And I had to elevate my game. I had to learn a new technology. I had responsibilities that were much more complex, much more multifaceted. And so I said, wow, I've got to go and figure out how to make a difference here. And so I worked, used my same formula, look for opportunities to be successful that are not so obvious. And I've said that to so many women that I mentor, and they say, but that's not a job posting, or that job doesn't exist, or well, go create it, right? Look for opportunities. Sometimes the ugliest jobs are the ones that no one else wants. And you can go and make something very meaningful and impactful out of them. Your calling can be something that you do and you enjoy doing it and you do it well. Your gift is what you do naturally, right? And so I set about thinking, well, what is it that I like to do naturally? And it's connecting people. It's connecting humans, right? It's creating networks. It's finding what somebody wants and matching it with what, they need. And it's connecting, which in a way for someone like myself, who's been in a sales world my entire life, that's a very valuable asset to have in being able to be a connector of people.
Now, Julie, you have been to Philippines many times. You work closely with a lot of people. I know you talk on and on about how great Filipinos are and all that. When you mentor women in the Philippines, what do you focus on for them?
My advice is finding your trust circle, right? Find people that you can trust, people that are in elevated positions, right? From yourself that you can go to and create a circle of trust with them to say, look, I want to expand my role, or I want to start doing a little bit things differently, or I want to, I want to participate in the Women of Ibex, whatever it may be. If you can go find those 2 or 3 people that kind of help bolster your confidence a little bit, let people in on what you want to do, right? Don't keep it to yourself and expect people just to assume, right? And just put yourself out there a little bit. It only takes a couple of steps initially. And then you can start to increase that, that circle of influence around you. And then you'll see that 9 out of 10 times, everybody is willing to help and they want to help.
Let's move now to our next guest is Christine Enzio Brown. She is the CEO of Chalkboard. It is one of these tech companies, and I have a big thing for tech companies and the people who run them. So yeah, really glad to have her in education. I think we all need, and especially over this COVID time, it has reminded us that we do need innovations in education. Children love technology, and so it seems reasonable that technology platforms that enable education should be a good bet. So we're pleased to have Christine to talk about this and her own journey. She's Filipina, but has moved part of her time, I think, in the United States in Boston, but currently working in London. So yeah, a real global citizen, but certainly a Filipino at heart. So please welcome Christine Brown. Glad to have you, Christine.
Thank you, Richard. Hello, everyone. It's actually a great pleasure to be here today to be telling my story and to be sharing this platform that you all created with very successful women. I want to say there are two things that transformed my life. Those two things are education and the people that I met. But today, I want to focus on the story of my education and how that inspired me to create Chalkboard. My father was an overseas Filipino worker for 20 years. He worked in Saudi Arabia, Cuba, and USA. He did not finish college, so he worked as a driver, a warehouseman, as a cook, so he could afford us a good school in the Philippines. When my father was still alive, he would always tell me that he could only give me one thing, and that is a good education. I know and acknowledge that he spent every single cent that he had on my studies and my sisters. And I even remember this story when he would probably tell me that he sent me to a summer program, and one of my classmates is actually a daughter of a doctor in a hospital that he worked at. So what did education do to me? So I think my education provided me with the technical skills and the credentials to work for in the largest companies in the world. I became a reputable resource person in the financial services in the US. So I think none of those would have been possible without my education. And this year, actually, I'm getting my master's at London Business School as one of their scholars. And every day at school, I'm surrounded by these global leaders who want to change the world. I'm the only one from the Philippines this year. I'm confident that there are so many women or men that deserve a similar opportunity that I received. To be truly grateful, I don't want that journey to stop there. I don't want that opportunity to stop in myself. So that's why I founded Chalkboard. I actually founded this platform in 2020. And I wanted a platform where Filipino children can actually realize their full potential with the use of education and learning. It actually, in this platform, children as young as 5 years old can learn things that are relevant in their future, and also learn things that they actually enjoy. So in this platform, parents and children are empowered to learn what they want and whenever they want it. Investment in learning pays the best interest.
Now, Christine, I've been a really big, I think, supporter and certainly a promoter of online education, technology-enabled education, these kinds of things. It seems slower to come than I thought. Now, that's maybe a bit ridiculous because you might think that, everyone thinks that once they believe in something, it should happen tomorrow, which isn't. But how long before you think we're going to have wide acceptance of education platforms like what you are doing that are so important for the future?
So the pandemic definitely opened up that opportunity and accelerated it. So there's really no going back at this point. It's going in the path in the right direction. So I put some responsibility on me myself, having that information, how people are using technology to learn. If anything, I think there's also confusion of there's a lot out there. So how do you actually filter which ones are working for yourself, or which ones are safer than others, and which are really helping you towards a certain goal.
Welcome to the final guest of this episode is Leonor Briones, the Secretary of the Department of Education. She has been in the spotlight like never before because of the pandemic. Her millions of teachers that report to her have continued keeping this nation's educational system moving ahead all during this time, because she insisted that education must continue for the nation's children. Welcome, Secretary.
I was born on the eve of World War II in October 1940, just when the Philippines and the rest of the world were preparing for World War II. Like many families, my own family fled to the mountains. We lived in a very deep gorge surrounded by hills and forests, so that we're not visible from the top or from the sky, where planes were chasing each other, and we could hear gunfire and shots. My parents were teachers, and what my mother did to distract the children from the noise and the horror of war was to gather them in our house at the bottom of the gorge and teach them how to read and write. There was no paper, so banana leaves were used with their lines, and sharpened bamboo sticks like barbecue sticks were used as pencils. And that is how I learned how to write and also how to read from a worn book which my mother had saved from the public school. I completed my high school education as a class valedictorian before proceeding to Silliman for 4 years straight scholarships, sponsored by many generous individuals, both American and Filipino. I majored in accounting. I finished magna cum laude from Silliman University, worked for a while in the Department of Finance of the university, and at the same time also as a bookkeeper in 2 bookstores. From Silliman University, I proceeded to the University of the Philippines for graduate studies in public administration. I was fortunate to be granted a study leave to go to Harvard. I went to Harvard twice, first on the management of government enterprises, and secondly on innovations in times of crisis, in times of major and basic changes, not only in our regions and our countries, but the rest of the world. I am asked, what are my contributions to the development of women? I was fortunate in that I grew up in a family where there were no distinctions between girl children and boy children. The driving ambition was to send all of us to school. We all know that before the waves of conquerors came to the Philippines, women had equal status with men. They were also rulers, they were warriors, they were healers, they were priestesses, they were leaders. And then, when the conquerors came, as stated by Carmen Guerrero Nakpil, Filipinos, particularly the women, spent 300 years in the convent and 50 years in Hollywood. I would add to that 5 years in a foreign prison, imperialist prison, with our third conqueror. And so, what I consider as my contributions are my efforts to help in bringing back, in resuscitating, in encouraging, and inspiring the traditional role of women in traditional pre-conquesta, pre-conqueror, pre-imperialist society, equal with men, free with all of what they wanted to be, and playing the roles that they were most suited for.
Thank you, Secretary Briones, and keep up the fantastic work you and your millions of teachers are doing. Okay, and let's close the event on a high point. We welcome Kate Bellosillo to give us some final inspirational message, and she is such an interesting and inspirational person, a mother of 8 who built her business into quite an empire and really a force in delivering women into careers. So please welcome Kate Bellosillo of Cayenne, Philippines. Glad to have you, Kate.
Hi, Richard. Thank you so much for that very kind introduction. We learned today that we must know our life purpose. It's important for us to do this. And how do we discover this? Doreen Benavidez points us in the right direction when she said, find a need and provide a solution to it. This has led her to a ministry that uplifts the lives of the Mangyan tribe in Occidental Mindoro. Then we have environmentalist Jenica Dizon. What lights the fire in her heart is providing access to clean water for everyone who needs it. On the other hand, what wakes up Anaina Batra every single day, excited about life, is helping poor communities, giving them hope and transforming their lives. For Christine Brown, it's providing the first end-to-end online learning solution that connects students to teachers. Can you imagine that? For Pamela Pelapio, it's her work with Filipino OFWs. What a simple life lesson. Find the need and fill it. And I remember these words from Frederick Buechner, an American writer and theologian who once said, "The place where God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet." This place, my dear friends, is your mission, your life purpose, your North Star. After knowing your life purpose, you have to live that purpose. Secretary Briones beautifully put it when she said, we need to do the work that needs to be done every moment of every day, even if no one is watching us or telling us what to do. We call this grit. And this is what journalists Ruth Cabal and other corporate leaders like Nina, Gemma, Colleen, Claire, and Julie have. The certainty of mission and vision and the tenacity to carry it out in the workplace. In the course of living your purpose, my advice is stay away from people who are negative. Stay away from people who are dream stealers, people who will zap your positive energy. Instead, surround yourself with people who love you and will fan the fire of passion in your heart so you can be the best version of yourself. You know, I love what Tonichi Parekh said, when she urged us to find a mentor to guide us and accompany us in our journey. Above all, stay true to who you are. Always take time to connect to the divine in the silence of your heart. Listen to the voice of your soul. You know, in my own life, I have seen that from moments of deep silence and solitude, creativity and inspiration flow. My dear friends, especially the women out there, remember this: the world needs to hear your voice. The world needs to hear your story. Thank you, Ms. Rebecca Bustamante and Mr. Richard Mills, for this wonderful opportunity to be part of the Asia CEO Women's Forum.
Thank you again for watching this episode. That was Asia Women's Forum 2022, and we look forward to seeing you at the next episode ahead.